Thank you so much, Chair Bowman, Vice Chair Drazen, Vice Chair Pham, members of the committee. My name is Nathan Sosa. I'm the state representative for District 30, which is Hillsborough, Helvetia, and Rock Creek. And colleagues, over the past 5 years, Oregonians have seen their electric and gas bills increase by approximately 40 to 56%. This has resulted in tens of thousands of disconnections. Even the customers who have not been disconnected are feeling the financial hit from the ever-increasing utility costs that are eating into their household budgets. My constituents are experiencing this, and they've said so numerous times at town halls, at constituent coffees, at community events. And that is what prompted me to bring the Fair Energy Act that is before you today, House Bill 3179. The bill would reform the utility rate setting process in a number of ways to ensure that the interests of Oregon consumers are prioritized. Over the past several months, I've worked extensively with the Public Utility Commission, the Citizen Utility Board, the investor-owned utilities, environmental justice groups, and other stakeholders on the bill and on the Dash 8 amendment that is before you today. The bill as amended does a number of things. First, it says that before approving a general rate increase, the PUC will have to consider the cumulative economic impact of the proposed rate on residential customers. And as part of the general rate increase request, the utilities will submit and the PUC will consider a variety of additional data points that are not currently being considered. Among other things, they will look at the impact on consumers, the average monthly utility bill for the residential consumers over the past 18 months, the estimated dollar amount and percentage increase that the customers will experience if the rate increase goes into effect. They will look at the average cost of living and the cost of fuel for the region, the state, and the service area in question. They will look at the number of disconnections that there are in the service area, the number of overdue balances, data on the cost of energy for commercial as well as industrial customers relative to other states and historic trends, and any other data that the PUC deems relevant. The reason that this section is in there is so that the PUC will be able to take a more comprehensive look at the entire landscape before approving a general rate increase. So they will be not only looking at does this generate a good return for the utility investors, which is what they look at now, but also looking at what is the actual economic impact going to be on the consumers, and can they bear that? And the reason that's important is because the next section talks about the phase-in option. The PUC may adjust rates to mitigate an increase in residential customer rates if the increase is of such magnitude that if applied at the higher rate or all at once, the increase would affect the ability of residential customers to maintain adequate utility service. Meaning that if the rate increase is appropriate, but if implementing it all at once would create the kind of price shocks and the mass disconnections that we have seen, the PUC will now have the discretion to be able to phase that in over time, which is something that they currently don't do. The next section talks about the winter ban. Increases in residential rates will not be able to take effect from November 1st to March 31st. What we've seen recently is that often these rate increase requests are timed in such a way that they take effect in the dead of winter, when people's energy usage is at its highest, and so people are seeing their bills spike at the absolute worst time. And that is also what is leading to some of these record disconnections. So this will simply say that those rate increases, if approved, would simply not take effect during the middle of winter. They would take effect outside of that time period to give consumers a little bit more runway to be able to absorb those costs. Another thing it talks about is timeline, that the general rate increase will not take effect within 18 months from the effective date of the last increase. This would apply to both residential and business customers. The idea there is that you would not have customers subjected to back-to-back increases that we have seen in some cases. But that will actually only be in effect for approximately 18 months after the bill is signed into law, if it is, because the PUC will then transition to multi-year rate making, which is something that the industry was very interested in and had requested, and something that we added in response to their feedback. So the PUC will be able to establish a multi-year rate plan for the investor-owned utilities, which will give them control over when and how often the utilities can request a major rate increase. Another section of the bill talks about securitization. This allows utilities to use low-cost bonds to fund expensive capital projects rather than higher-interest shareholder financing. And although the long-term cost of the bonds will be included in future rate requests, it will be spread out over time. Again, the idea there is to prevent the kind of price shocks that we're seeing by giving the utilities the discretion to be able to use those low-interest bonds to spread those costs out over time rather than hitting consumers with them all at once. Of course, those would still need to be approved by the PUC. And the final few sections of the bill talks about transparency. Every year, the utilities will have to post online the cost categories for their customers, what their customers are paying for per rule set by the PUC. So if the utilities say, well, we're having to increase rates to pay for this or that, at the end of the year, they will have to post online a chart or a graph that says, okay, actually proving that is where the money went, to provide greater transparency for customers so they know what they're paying for. And then finally, every year the utilities will have to file with the PUC any rate adjustments they expect over the next 12 months. And this will provide an aggregated overview of rate increases, both general and single issue rate increases to the public, again, per rules that will be set by the PUC, just to give folks a heads up as to what they can expect in the near future. So, colleagues, the current rate-setting process is simply not working for most Oregonians. The dramatic price spikes and record disconnections we've seen simply are not sustainable. The Fair Energy Act is designed to create a more balanced and a more transparent process to ensure that consumer interests are explicitly considered alongside those of the utility investors and to prevent the types of unprecedented price shocks and disconnections that we have seen. And I urge your support. I'm happy to answer any questions.